The darkness pressed against Alina Harper's eyelids like a physical weight. Her head throbbed with each heartbeat, a rhythmic punishment that made her want to sink back into unconsciousness. But something was wrong. The silk beneath her fingertips, the scent of expensive cologne mixed with leather and gunpowder, the distant murmur of male voices speaking in hushed Italian. This wasn't her bed. Alina's eyes snapped open. Panic clawed at her throat as she took in the unfamiliar surroundings, a vast bedroom wrapped in shadows and luxury. Floor to ceiling, windows revealed a city skyline she recognized as New York, but from an angle she'd never seen before. The furniture was all dark wood and black leather, masculine and imposing. Everything screamed money and power in a way that made her skin crawl. She sat up too quickly, and the room tilted. Her hands flew to her temples, trying to steady the spinning world. That's when she saw it, a gold band on her left ring finger, catching the dim light from the city beyond the windows. No, the word escaped as a whisper. Alina stared at the ring as if it might disappear if she looked hard enough. It was elegant, expensive, with tiny diamonds embedded in an intricate pattern that looked almost like thorns. Beautiful and dangerous. She was still wearing the black cocktail dress from last night, the fundraiser. She remembered that much. Her father's foundation. Champagne and small talk, and then nothing. A void where memories should be. The door handle turned. Alina's breath caught as the heavy door swung open silently on well-oiled hinges. Two men in dark suits stood in the hallway beyond, their hands resting on barely concealed weapons. Guards. But they weren't looking at her. Their attention was focused outward, down the hallway, as if watching for threats. The man who entered made the spacious room feel suddenly small. Dante Morty moved with the controlled grace of a predator perfectly at ease in his territory. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that looked slightly mussed, as if he'd been running his hands through it. His white dress shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, sleeves rolled up to reveal powerful forearms marked with intricate tattoos that disappeared beneath the fabric. But it was his eyes that made Alina's breath stop, dark as midnight, intense, and fixed entirely on her. "You're awake." His voice was deep, tinged with an accent that softened the edges of his words without diminishing their impact. "How do you feel?" Alina scrambled backward on the bed until her back hit the headboard. "Who are you? Where am I? What?" Her hand rose to display the ring. "What is this?" Dante stopped at the foot of the bed, his expression unreadable. For a long moment, he simply studied her, as if memorizing every detail of her face. Then he spoke the words that shattered what remained of her composure. "You became my wife before sunrise." The room seemed to tilt again, but this time it had nothing to do with whatever was making her head pound. "That's impossible. I don't even know you." "You knew me well enough to say yes." He moved to a chair near the window, settling into it with casual elegance that belied the tension radiating from his frame. "Though I suspect you don't remember much of last night." "I remember the fundraiser, my father's foundation." Alina's voice cracked. "Where is my father? Does he know where I am?" Something flickered across Dante's features, regret, concern. It was gone before she could identify it. "Your father is safe, as are you despite what you might think." "Safe?" Alina let out a laugh that bordered on hysteria. "I wake up in a stranger's bed with armed guards outside and a wedding ring I don't remember getting, and you're telling me I'm safe." "The guards aren't keeping you in, Alina." The way he said her name, with a familiarity that seemed impossible, made her shiver. "They're keeping others out." "Why would anyone?" She stopped, pressing her palms against her temples as pain spiked through her skull. Images flashed, champagne flutes shattering, someone screaming, strong arms pulling her behind an overturned table. "Careful." Dante was beside her in an instant, his hand hovering near her shoulder but not quite touching. This close, she could see the concern etched in the lines around his eyes, the barely leashed violence in the set of his jaw. "The doctor said you might have a concussion. You need to take it slow." "A doctor?" Alina pulled away from his proximity, from the heat that seemed to radiate from him. "What happened to me?" Dante returned to his chair, but his posture remained coiled, ready. "What do you remember after arriving at the fundraiser?" Alina closed her eyes, trying to push through the fog. I was there with my father. He was giving a speech about the new children's hospital wing. I had champagne, just one glass. Then I went to the bathroom and… nothing. Just darkness and the vague sensation of fear. You never made it to the bathroom. Dante's voice had gone cold, dangerous. They were waiting for you. Who? Men who wanted to use you to get to me. Alina's eyes flew open. But I don't even know you. Why would anyone think? Because for the past 3 months, I've been ensuring your father's foundation stayed afloat. Dante stood, packing to the window like a caged panther. The city lights cast him in sharp relief, all angles and shadows and barely contained power. Every donation that mysteriously appeared, every investor who suddenly became interested, every bureaucratic obstacle that vanished, that was me. The room spun again, but this time from shock rather than injury. Alina thought of her father's relief as the foundation's finances stabilized, his joy at being able to continue their work with the city's most vulnerable children. Why? What could you possibly gain from? Nothing. He turned to face her, and for a moment his mask slipped. She saw something raw and unexpected in his expression. I gained nothing from it. That was the point. I don't understand. No, you wouldn't. His laugh was bitter. The daughter of the saintly Dr. Harper wouldn't understand why someone like me might want to do something good without taking credit, without extracting a price. But not everything in my world is about transaction and territory. Alina studied him, this dangerous stranger who claimed to be her husband. Even from across the room, his presence was overwhelming, the kind of man who commanded attention simply by existing. The tattoos she glimpsed on his arms looked like more than decoration. They told stories in a language she couldn't read. You're saying someone attacked me because of anonymous donations. I'm saying someone discovered my interest in your father's work, in you. The last 2 words were almost inaudible. The Calabrese family has been looking for leverage against me for months. Last night, they thought they found it. But I'm nobody to you. We've never even met. Alina paused, frowning. Have we? Dante moved to a cabinet, pulling out a bottle of water and bringing it to her. Their fingers brushed as she took it, and a jolt of recognition shot through her, not quite memory, but something deeper. Instinct, maybe, or inevitability. We met once, he said quietly. 3 months ago. You were leaving the hospital after a late shift volunteering. 3 men were following you. Alina's hand tightened on the water bottle. She remembered that night, the footsteps that matched hers, the fear that made her walk faster, then the sudden absence of threat. She'd assumed they'd simply lost interest. That was you. I happened to be in the area. His tone suggested it was anything but coincidence. After that, I made sure someone was always watching, keeping you safe. You've been having me followed for 3 months. Anger flared through the confusion and fear. What gives you the right? The same thing that gave me the right to kill 2 men last night who tried to drag you into a van. His voice had gone lethal, and Alina saw him clearly for the first time. Not just a dangerous man, but a killer. Someone who dealt in violence as naturally as breathing. The same thing that gave me the right to burn down one of Calabrese's warehouses in retaliation. The same thing that made you grab my hand in that chaos and refuse to let go even when the danger passed. I wouldn't. You did. He moved closer, and Alina found herself unable to retreat. When the shooting started, when everyone was screaming and running, you trusted me. You looked at me, a stranger covered in blood that wasn't his own, and you trusted me to keep you safe. And then what? You decided to marry me while I was unconscious. No. Dante sat on the edge of the bed, still maintaining distance, but close enough that she could see the exhaustion he was trying to hide. I decided to marry you when you were very much conscious and very insistent that it was the only way. That's insane. Why would I? A knock interrupted her protest. One of the guards leaned in, speaking rapid Italian that made Dante's expression darken. What is it? Alina demanded. Dante stood, all business now. Calabrese's men. They're probing our defenses, looking for weak points. Let them have me. I'm nothing to them if we're not actually. We are actually. His voice cut through her denial like a blade. The marriage is legal, witnessed, and by now, very public. Every family in the city knows you're under my protection. Your protection? Alina stood too fast, swaying slightly. Dante's hand shot out to steady her, and she was struck by how gentle his touch was despite the strength she could feel beneath it. I don't need your protection. I need to go home. Your home is here now. Like hell it is. Something that might have been admiration flickered in his eyes. The fire is still there. Good, you'll need it. For what? For surviving what comes next. He moved toward the door, then paused. There are clothes in the closet, they should fit. Maria will bring breakfast soon. Eat something even if you're not hungry. You'll need your strength. Dante. His name felt strange on her tongue, too intimate for strangers, too casual for what he claimed they were. Tell me the truth. Why did I agree to marry you? He turned back, and for a moment, his guard dropped completely. She saw exhaustion, worry, and something else, something that looked almost like longing. Because 20 minutes after midnight, while you were holding pressure on a wound in my side and Calabrese's men were closing in, you realized the same thing I did. Which was? That separately we were both as good as dead. Together, he paused at the door. Together, we might just survive until sunrise. The door closed behind him with a soft click, leaving Alina alone with her racing thoughts and the weight of a gold ring she didn't remember accepting. She moved to the window, looking out at the city below. Somewhere out there, her old life continued without her, her small apartment, her volunteer shifts, her normal, safe existence. But as she caught her reflection in the glass, she saw something different in her own eyes. Not just fear or confusion, but a spark of something else. Recognition. Because deep beneath the fog of whatever had been done to her memories, something remained. The feeling of Dante's hand in hers. The certainty that had flooded through her when their eyes met across a room full of chaos. The inexplicable pull that made her trust a dangerous stranger over every instinct screaming at her to run. Alina touched the glass, watching the city lights blur and dance. She needed to remember. Not just last night, but everything. Why she'd really said yes, what had happened in those lost hours, and most importantly, why looking at Dante, Morty felt less like meeting a stranger and more like coming home to someone she'd been waiting for all her life. Behind her, she heard footsteps in the hallway, guards changing shifts, voices discussing security protocols in a mixture of English and Italian. This was her reality now, at least until she could piece together the truth. Married to a man who killed for her before they'd even properly met. Protected by walls of armed men and bulletproof glass. Trapped in a luxury prison with a husband who looked at her like she was both his salvation and his damnation. The headache was getting worse, pulsing in time with her heartbeat. Alina pressed her forehead against the cool glass and tried to think past the pain. There had to be more to this story. Dante had been deliberately vague about details, careful with his words. He was hiding something, probably many somethings. A soft knock preceded the door opening again. This time, it was a woman, older, maternal, with kind eyes that seemed at odds with the dangerous world Alina had woken up in. Mrs. Morty, the title made Alina flinch. I'm Maria. Mr. Morty asked me to bring you breakfast and, she hesitated, and to give you this. She held out a small velvet box. Inside was a necklace, a simple gold chain with a pendant that made Alina's breath catch. It was a small compass, intricately detailed and obviously antique. He said you were wearing it last night. It was damaged in the incident. He had it repaired. Alina took the necklace with trembling fingers. She did remember this. It had been her mother's, the only thing of value she owned. She wore it everywhere, a constant reminder of the woman who died when Alina was 12. Thank you, she managed. Maria set down a tray of food that smelled incredible despite Alina's churning stomach. 30 years I've worked for the Morty family, she said quietly. I've never seen Mr. Dante look at anyone the way he looks at you. How long have I been here? Since 3 this morning. Mr. Dante carried you in himself, wouldn't let anyone else touch you. He hasn't left your side until now. Alina fingered the compass pendant. Maria, do you know what happened? Really happened? The older woman's expression grew guarded. I know that Mr. Dante would burn this entire city to keep you safe. I know that when he brought you here, he was more frightened than I've ever seen him, and I've seen that boy face down death more times than I can count. She moved toward the door, then paused. And I know that before sunrise, in front of God and witnesses, you looked him in the eyes and said, I choose this. I choose you. But why? Why would I? That's a question only you can answer, Mrs. Morty. But perhaps, when your memories return, you'll find that some choices are made not with the mind, but with the soul. Maria left, and Alina was alone again with her confusion and the growing certainty that whatever had happened last night had changed everything. She touched the ring on her finger, then the compass at her throat. 2 circles of gold binding her to a life she didn't remember choosing. Outside, the city was waking up. Normal people heading to normal jobs, living normal lives. Alina had been one of them just yesterday. Now she was something else entirely. The wife of Dante Morty, a man whose name she was beginning to suspect carried weight in shadows she'd never known existed. She needed answers. Real answers, not the carefully edited version Dante had given her. But first, she needed to eat something and clear her head. The pounding had subsided to a dull ache, and with it came fragments, not quite memories, but impressions. The sound of her own voice saying, yes. The feeling of absolute certainty that had accompanied that word. The warmth of a hand holding hers as someone spoke vows in Italian and English. Alina sat at the small table by the window and forced herself to eat, mechanically chewing food she didn't taste. With each bite, she felt strength returning, and with strength came determination. She would remember. She would uncover the truth. And then she would decide what to do about this impossible situation. A commotion in the hallway drew her attention, raised voices, rapid footsteps. The door burst open, and Dante strode in, his white shirt now marked with blood. Pack whatever you need, he commanded, moving to a wall safe she hadn't noticed. We're leaving. What happened? Is that your blood? No. He pulled out documents, cash, and a gun that he tucked into a holster with practiced ease. Calabrese just declared war. He says if I won't return what I stole from him, he'll take it back with interest. What did you steal? Dante turned to her, his dark eyes burning with an intensity that should have frightened her, but instead sent heat racing through her veins. You. The safe house was nothing like the penthouse. Hidden in an unassuming Brooklyn brownstone, it felt more like a fortress than a home. Alina watched from the window as Dante's men swept the street, their movements professional and thorough. They'd left Manhattan in a convoy of black SUVs, taking a circuitous route that made her dizzy trying to follow. Get away from the window. Dante's voice came from behind her, controlled but tense. Alina stepped back, turning to face him. He'd changed into a black sweater and jeans, looking less like a mafia boss and more like a dangerous graduate student. The gun was still there, though, a constant reminder of the reality she'd woken up to. How long do we stay here? Until I deal with Calabrese. He moved through the space, checking sight lines, testing locks. Could be days, could be longer. I can't just disappear. I have a job, responsibilities. Your father has been told you're safe. Your job at the museum has been given family emergency leave. He paused in his security check. Your cat is being fed. You thought of my cat. The detail was so unexpected, so oddly thoughtful, that Alina didn't know how to process it. Oscar Wright, orange tabby, missing part of his left ear. Your neighbor, Mrs. Chen, is taking care of him. The fact that he knew these details about her life should have been creepy. Instead, it made something warm unfold in her chest. How long have you been watching me, really? Dante settled into a chair across from her, maintaining that careful distance he'd kept since she woke up. Since the night we met. The real first time, not the incident 3 months ago. I don't remember. Last year, December 15th, the Whitmore Gallery opening. Alina's breath caught. She did remember that night, a charity auction for her father's foundation. She'd felt out of place among the glittering crowd, nursing a single glass of champagne for hours. You bid on the Monet sketch, she said slowly. $200,000. You stood in front of it for 20 minutes just staring. You had tears in your eyes. My mother loved Monet. She had prints all over our apartment when I was young. Elena pulled her knees to her chest, making herself smaller in the oversized armchair. Why were you there? Business. The Whitmores launder money for several families. I was there to remind them that their neutrality came with a price. His expression darkened. Then I saw you crying in front of that painting, trying to hide it from all those vultures who couldn't see real emotion if it bit them. So you bought it. I bought it. He stood, moving to a hidden panel in the wall. Behind it was a safe, and from that safe he pulled out a familiar sketch. I was going to send it to you anonymously for Christmas. Then I realized that might frighten you, so I held on to it, waiting for the right moment. Elena stared at the sketch, a simple study of water lilies that had made her mother smile even during chemo. You've had it all this time. I've had a lot of things all this time. Dante replaced the sketch carefully. Questions, mostly, about how someone who grew up surrounded by corruption could remain so untouched by it. About why you spent your free time reading to sick kids when you could have been living the socialite life your trust fund afforded. You investigated me. Thoroughly, no apology in his tone. At first it was curiosity, then it became something else. Obsession. Protection. He returned to his chair, but his posture was anything but relaxed. Your father's foundation was bleeding money. Not through any fault of his own, someone was sabotaging it. Permits delayed, donations redirected, strategic harassment. Classic Calabrese tactics. Elena's mind raced. He was targeting my father. Why? To get to me eventually. Calabrese knew about my interest. He was playing a long game, waiting for the perfect moment to use you as leverage. But that doesn't make sense. If you were just watching from afar. I wasn't as subtle as I thought. Dante's laugh was self-deprecating. My men noticed, which meant other families noticed. In our world, that kind of focused attention means something. What does it mean? He met her eyes directly. It means you're either a weakness to exploit or a treasure to protect. Calabrese chose to see you as the former. A memory flickered, not complete, just a fragment. A voice saying her name, hands pulling at her arms, the sound of glass breaking. I'm starting to remember, she whispered. At the fundraiser, someone grabbed me in the hallway. 2 of Calabrese's men. They were supposed to take you quietly, use you to force my cooperation in a territory dispute. Dante's hands clenched. They didn't expect you to fight back. Another flash, her heel connecting with someone's knee, nails raking across a face, screaming fire instead of help, because she'd read somewhere that people responded faster to fire. You fought like a wild thing, Dante continued, and there was pride in his voice. By the time I got there, you'd bloodied one's nose and nearly gouged out the other's eye. You killed them. It wasn't a question. She could see it now, hazily, Dante appearing like an avenging angel, violence made flesh, death in an expensive suit. Without hesitation, no remorse in his voice, they touched what was mine. I wasn't yours. I'm still not. Aren't you? He leaned forward, and suddenly the space between them felt charged. Then why, when the bullets started flying and everyone ran, did you run toward me instead of away? Why did you press your hands against my wound and tell me I wasn't allowed to die because you hadn't gotten the chance to yell at me for stalking you yet? The memory slammed into her full force. Blood, so much blood, seeping through her fingers. Dante's face going pale, his eyes starting to drift. Her own voice, fierce and desperate. Don't you dare die on me, you mysterious bastard. Not when I have so many questions. I was shot. Grazed, Calabrese's backup arrived faster than expected. Dante lifted his sweater slightly, showing a bandage along his ribs. You stayed with me. Even when my men tried to pull you to safety, you stayed. And then Calabrese himself arrived. Made it clear that if you left with him, he'd let the rest of us go. No more bloodshed. Elena's stomach turned. What was he going to do to me? Nothing good. Dante's expression went dark. He has particular tastes when it comes to breaking people. especially women who mean something to his enemies. So you married me instead. How does that? Marriage in our world means something. It's a declaration, a line in the sand. To take another man's wife is an act of war that brings every family down on your head. Even Calabrese isn't stupid enough to risk that. But we could have just pretended. He had a judge in his pocket. The only way to make it real was to make it real. Dante stood, packing now. You understood that. You understood that the moment that ring went on your finger, you became untouchable by our laws. Your laws. Elena stood too, anger flaring. Not real laws, not normal, sane people laws. Normal, sane people laws weren't going to save you from what Calabrese had planned. They stood facing each other, the tension crackling between them. Elena could feel her heart racing, but she wasn't sure if it was from anger or something else, something that had to do with the way Dante looked at her, like she was something precious and terrible all at once. A phone buzzed. Dante answered it, his expression growing increasingly grim as he listened to whoever was on the other end. He spoke in rapid Italian, giving what sounded like orders. "What is it?" Elena asked when he hung up. "Calabrese just put a bounty on you. 5 million to anyone who brings you to him alive." Alive? He wants to make an example, show what happens to those who defy him. Dante moved to the window, checking the street again. Every two-bit thug in the city will be looking for you now. Then let me go. I'll disappear, leave the city. You think geography matters to him? You think there's anywhere in the world you could run where he wouldn't find you? Dante turned to her, his control finally cracking. You're my wife now, Elena. That means something whether you remember saying yes or not. It means I protect you with everything I have, everything I am. I don't want people dying for me. People die every day in this city. At least now their deaths might mean something. That's horrible. That's reality. He moved closer, and Elena found herself backing up until she hit the wall. You wanted the truth. Here it is. I've killed 15 men in my life. Every single one deserved it. I run territories that deal in things that would make your skin crawl, but I keep the worst of it out. No kids, no trafficking, no innocent casualties. I'm not a good man, Elena, but for you, I'm trying to be better. Why? The word came out as barely a whisper. Why me? Dante raised his hand slowly, giving her time to pull away, and touched her cheek. His thumb traced the line of her jaw, and Elena felt that same jolt of recognition, of rightness, that made no logical sense. Because you looked at that Monet sketch like it held all the beauty in the world. Because you read Harry Potter to cancer kids with different voices for every character. Because when you laugh, really laugh, you snort a little and then cover your mouth like you're embarrassed. His hand dropped. Because when I watched you at that gallery, surrounded by all that ugliness dressed up as sophistication, you were the only real thing in the room. Elena's chest felt tight. That's not love, that's obsession, possession. I know what I am, Elena. I know what this looks like from the outside. He stepped back, giving her space. But I also know that when you had the chance to run last night, when that judge asked if you were entering this marriage of your own free will, you said yes without hesitation. I don't remember. Then let me help you. Before she could protest, Dante pulled out his phone, scrolling through it before holding it out to her. It was a video, grainy but clear enough. Her in her torn cocktail dress, Dante beside her in his blood-stained shirt. A man in judge's robes looking deeply uncomfortable. And her own voice, clear and certain. I, Elena Harper, take this man to be my husband. I enter this union of my own free will with full knowledge of what it means. I choose this. I choose him. Elena watched herself on the screen, watched the way she looked at Dante as she said the words, the way her hand held his like an anchor. There was no fear in her eyes, no hesitation, just determination and something that looked terrifyingly like certainty. Why? She asked again. Why would I choose this? Watch, Dante said quietly. The video continued. Calabrese was there, standing in the background, his face twisted with rage. He said something the phone didn't quite pick up, and Videolina turned to face him. Because, her recorded self said, voice carrying clearly, I've seen what both of you are. And given the choice between a monster who admits what he is and one who pretends to be civilized while planning my torture. I'll take the honest monster every time." The video ended. Alina stared at the blank screen, trying to reconcile the woman in that video with who she thought she was. "You knew," she said slowly. "Even with the head trauma, some part of you knew who to trust. Or I manipulated you into it." Dante took his phone back. "Is that what you think happened?" Alina wanted to say yes. It would be easier, cleaner, to paint him as the villain. But she couldn't forget the way he'd touched her face, gentle despite his capacity for violence. The way he'd thought to save her cat. The Monet sketch he'd kept for a year, waiting. "I think," she said carefully, "that there's more to this story than you're telling me." "There always is." He moved to the kitchen area, starting to prepare what looked like lunch. Normal, domestic movements that seemed surreal given their situation. "Ask your questions." "How did Calabrese know about your interest in me?" "Someone in my organization told him. I haven't figured out who yet, but when I do." He let the threat hang unfinished. "You have a mole." "They're probably running by now, knowing what I'll do when I find them." He pulled ingredients from the refrigerator with practiced ease. "Are you allergic to anything?" "Shellfish, you're going to cook." "You need to eat. Stress and head trauma are a bad combination." He started chopping vegetables with the same lethal precision she'd seen in his movements last night, or what she remembered of them. "Next question. What happens when this is over? When Calabrese is dealt with?" Dante paused in his chopping. "That depends. On whether you want to stay married to a monster." The word hung between them, the same one she'd used in the video. Alina moved closer to the kitchen area, drawn despite herself. "You're not a monster. I'm not a hero either." "I don't need a hero." The words surprised her as they came out. Heroes get people killed trying to do the right thing. Sometimes survival requires harder choices. Dante looked at her then, really looked at her, and Alina felt exposed in a way that had nothing to do with physical vulnerability. "You're starting to remember more than just last night, aren't you?" She nodded slowly. "Fragments, images, feelings mostly." "What kind of feelings?" Heat crept up her neck. "Like I've been waiting for something without knowing what. Like when I saw you at the fundraiser, some part of me recognized you even though we'd never really met." The Italians have a word for it. Colpo di fulmine, the lightning strike. When you see someone and know, instantly and completely, that your life just changed. "Is that what happened to you, at the gallery?" "Yes. Simple, honest, devastating. I spent a year trying to convince myself otherwise. Then you smiled at that old security guard who let you stay 5 minutes past closing, and I knew I was completely fucked." Despite everything, Alina laughed. "How romantic." "I told you I'm not a good man. I don't do flowers and sonnets. I do protection and possession and an absolute certainty that anyone who tries to harm you will die screaming." "That shouldn't be appealing." "But it is." Not a question. Dante abandoned the vegetables, moving around the counter toward her. "Some part of you recognizes what this is, even if your conscious mind is fighting it." "This is insane." "The whole world is insane, Alina. At least our particular madness makes sense." He was close enough now that she could smell him, that cologne she'd woken up to, mixed with something uniquely him. Dangerous and intoxicating and impossibly right. A sharp crack from outside shattered the moment. Dante moved instantly, pushing Alina behind him as he drew his weapon. "Stay down," he ordered, all business now. More sounds, muffled shouts, running feet. Dante's phone rang. "Report," he barked into it, then his expression shifted. "How many? Get everyone inside, full lockdown." "What is it?" "Calabrese found us. He's coming with everything he has." Dante moved with lethal purpose, checking weapons, barricading entrances. "Alina, I need you to listen very carefully. There's a panic room upstairs, third door on the left. The code is your birthday." "I'm not hiding while you fight." "This isn't a discussion." "You're right, it's not." Alina grabbed his arm, feeling the tension vibrating through him. "I chose this, remember? Even if I don't fully remember why I chose it. That means something. It means you were trying to survive. No, the certainty in her own voice surprised her. It means I saw something in you worth standing beside. Don't make me a liar now. Dante stared at her for a long moment. Then he pulled out a second gun, smaller, checking it before holding it out to her. You know how to use this. Point and shoot right. Despite everything, he almost smiled. Something like that. Safety's here. Only shoot if you have to and aim center mass. The weight of the weapon felt strange in her hands. This morning, she'd been a museum curator and volunteer. Now she was holding a gun, preparing for a siege beside a husband she didn't remember marrying. Elena, Dante touched her face again, that same gentle brush of fingers. Whatever happens, know that last night was not the first time I would have died for you. It was just the first time you were there to see it. Before she could respond, the lights went out. The darkness was absolute for a moment, then emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in an eerie red glow. Dante pulled her against him, his body a shield between her and the door. They're here, he whispered against her ear. Remember, we survived together or not at all. The first wave came through the windows. Glass exploded inward in a shower of deadly crystals as smoke grenades rolled across the floor. Dante moved like liquid darkness, pulling Elena behind the overturned kitchen table as bullets chewed through the walls where they'd been standing. Panic room now, he shouted over the chaos. Not without you. She could barely see through the smoke, but she felt him, his hand in hers, pulling her through the chaos with unerring precision. They made it halfway to the stairs before the front door exploded off its hinges. 3 men rushed in. Dante dropped 2 before they could fully enter, the third diving for cover. Elena's hands shook as she raised her own weapon, but her aim was true enough to keep the man pinned while Dante reloaded. Good girl, he breathed, and even in the middle of a firefight, the approval in his voice made her stomach flip. They reached the stairs, taking them 2 at a time. Behind them, she could hear more men entering, Dante's security forces engaging them. The house had become a war zone, and they were caught in the center of it. The panic room door was reinforced steel, hidden behind what looked like a normal bedroom door. Dante pushed her toward it. Codes 415, your birthday. Get inside, lock it, don't come out for anyone but me. Dante. He kissed her, hard, desperate, acclaiming and a goodbye all at once. Elena's free hand fisted in his shirt, holding on. I remember, she gasped when they broke apart. Last night before the ceremony, you asked me if I was sure. You tried to find another way. Elena. I remember what I said. Her voice was fierce now, certain. I said that sometimes we don't get to choose our battles, only our allies, and I choose you. Something shifted in his expression, surprise, hope, and a vulnerability she hadn't seen before. You remember. Not everything, but enough. She could hear footsteps on the stairs, enough to know I meant it. Then you remember what else you said. She did. It came back in a rush, standing in front of that judge, Calabrese's rage a palpable force behind them, and turning to Dante with absolute certainty. Where you go, I go. Your fights are my fights, together or not at all. Together, she said now, raising her gun, or not at all. The first man up the stairs went down with Dante's shot. The second with hers. They moved in sync, covering each other's blind spots, communicating without words. It should have been impossible. She was a civilian, untrained. But something deeper than training was at work. An instinct that made her move when he moved, duck when he fired, create space when he needed it. They were almost to the panic room when she saw him, a face she recognized from the hazy memories of last night. Not one of Calabrese's men, one of Dante's. Marco, Dante's voice held shock and something worse, hurt. You. Marco stood at the end of the hallway, gun raised. Behind him, more of Calabrese's men were ascending the stairs. Sorry, boss, but 5 million is enough to disappear forever. Start fresh. I trusted you, protected your sister when the Russians came for her. And I'm grateful, but gratitude doesn't pay bills. Marco's eyes shifted to Elena. Hand her over and I'll make sure you die quick. You know better than that. Yeah, Marco's smile was sad. I do. The gunfire was deafening in the enclosed space. Elena felt herself pulled backward, Dante's body shielding hers as they crashed through the panic room door. She heard him grunt, felt something warm and wet spreading across her hands where she held him. No, no, no. She pulled him inside, slamming the door and entering the code with shaking fingers. The locks engaged with a solid thunk. Dante was on the floor, blood spreading from a wound in his chest. Not a graze this time, a real hit, center mass. Don't you dare. Elena pressed her hands against the wound, trying to stem the bleeding. Don't you dare die on me now. Elena, his voice was weak, fatting. Shut up, save your strength. She looked around desperately. The panic room was well stocked, including medical supplies. She grabbed gauze, pressure bandages, anything she could find. You don't get to make me fall for you and then die. That's not how this works. His hand covered hers, weak but insistent. Fall for me. Obviously. Tears were streaming down her face as she worked. Why else would I agree to marry you? It wasn't just about survival. Some part of me knew, even through the trauma and chaos. Some part of me recognized you. Elena. The Monet sketch. You bought it because I cried. Who does that? Who sees a stranger cry and spends $200,000 just to make it right? Someone who has already lost the moment he saw her. The bandages were soaked through already. Outside, she could hear attempts to breach the door. They had minutes at most. There's something else. Dante's voice was getting weaker. About last night, about why Calabrese really wanted you. It doesn't matter now. It does. Your mother, she wasn't just a teacher. She witnessed something years ago, Calabrese murdering a federal judge. She was in witness protection when she met your father. Elena's hands stilled. What? That's why she really died. Not cancer, poison. Slow-acting, undetectable, Calabrese playing the long game. Dante coughed, blood speckling his lips. He found out you existed 3 months ago, the daughter of the woman who could have destroyed him. He wanted you as leverage, yes, but also revenge. The pieces clicked into place. Her father's sudden financial troubles, the targeting of the foundation, all of it designed to make her vulnerable. You knew, and you protected me anyway. I didn't know at first, only figured it out last night when he said your mother's name. His hand squeezed hers weakly. I'm sorry for all of it. Don't apologize, not now. She could hear them getting closer to breaching the door. Dante, how do we get out of this? We don't, but you do. He gestured weakly toward a panel in the wall. Hidden exit leads to the adjacent building. My men are waiting there. I'm not leaving you. Yes, you are, because that's what I need you to do. Live, Elena. Live and make sure that everything, my organization, my territory, goes to someone who'll run it right. Antonio, my cousin, he's a good man, better than me. Stop talking like you're already dead. The door was starting to buckle. They were almost through. I love you, Dante said quietly. I've loved you since that December night at the gallery. Every choice I've made since then has been about keeping you safe, keeping you away from my world. I failed at that, but I can still save you. No, Elena's voice was fierce. We save each other or not at all. That's what I said last night and I meant it. She stood, moving to the panel he'd indicated. But instead of opening it to flee, she pulled out what was hidden behind it, an assault rifle, military grade. You're not dying today, Dante Morty, and neither am I. Elena. Shut up and tell me how to use this thing. Despite everything, he laughed, a wet, pained sound that was still somehow beautiful. Safety's on the side. Single shot or full auto selector here. Brace against your shoulder or it'll knock you on your ass. The door exploded inward. Elena opened fire. She'd never held an assault rifle before, but rage was a powerful teacher. Rage for her mother, poisoned for witnessing a crime. Rage for Dante, bleeding out because he'd tried to protect her. Rage for herself, for the normal life that had been stolen from her before she was even born. The first wave of men went down under the spray of bullets. She kept firing until the magazine ran dry, then grabbed Dante's pistol and continued. Somewhere in the chaos, she heard sirens, multiple sirens getting closer. NYPD, the voice came from outside, amplified by a megaphone. This building is surrounded. Come out with your hands visible. The remaining attackers hesitated, caught between the police outside and Alina inside. That hesitation cost them. Dante's security forces, regrouping from the initial assault, came up the stairs behind them. The firefight was brief and decisive. Antonio, who she recognized from fragmented memories of last night, burst through the doorway. His eyes took in the scene, Alina standing with a smoking gun, Dante bleeding on the floor, and immediately began barking orders in Italian. Get the doctor up here now. Marco's dead, but Calabrese escaped. We need... He stopped, staring at Alina with something like awe. You did this, all of them. Is the ambulance coming? Her voice sounded strange to her own ears, hollow and distant. Already here, but we can't let them take him to a hospital. Too exposed. Antonio knelt beside Dante, checking his pulse. There's a medical facility we use. Dr. Rossi is already on his way. He's lost too much blood. He's survived worse, but Antonio's face was grim, though usually with less reason to live. Alina dropped to her knees beside Dante, taking his hand. His eyes were closed now, his breathing shallow. Don't leave me, she whispered. Not when I'm just starting to remember why I chose you. The next hour blurred together, medical personnel flooding in, Dante being stabilized and transported, police being handled by lawyers who appeared as if from thin air. Alina refused to leave Dante's side, her hand gripping his even as they worked on him. The medical facility was hidden beneath a legitimate urgent care clinic in Queens. Dr. Rossi, an elderly Italian man with steady hands and kind eyes, worked with silent efficiency. The bullet missed his heart by centimeters, he told Alina as he emerged from surgery. He's lucky, or perhaps blessed. He's stable now, but the next few hours are critical. Alina sat beside Dante's bed in the sterile recovery room, watching machines breathe for him. Antonio brought her coffee and a change of clothes. Somehow, someone had retrieved things from her apartment. He's never let anyone this close, Antonio said quietly, settling into a chair across from her. Even family he keeps at arm's length, but you, from the moment he saw you, something changed. Tell me about him, the real him, not the legend. Antonio smiled sadly. Our grandfather brought the family to America in the 60s, built an empire from nothing. When he died, Dante's father took over, brutal man, ruled through fear. Dante watched him destroy everything good in pursuit of power. When his father was killed 5 years ago, Dante inherited a blood-stained throne he never wanted. But he kept it. To change it, slowly, carefully, he's been reshaping what the Morty name means. Less violence, more business. Protection instead of exploitation. Half the city's community centers run on anonymous donations from him. Antonio leaned forward. But Calabrese represents the old way. Trafficking, drugs, violence for violence's sake. He saw Dante's reforms as weakness. And I was the proof of that weakness. You were proof he had a heart. In our world, that's the most dangerous thing to reveal. Alina looked at Dante's still form, remembering the gentle way he'd touched her face, the year he'd kept that Monet sketch waiting for the right moment. He's not weak. No, Antonio agreed. Loving someone despite the danger it brings, that's the ultimate strength. A monitor beeped, and Dante's eyes fluttered open. He looked disoriented for a moment, then his gaze found Alina. You stayed. His voice was rough, barely audible. Where else would I go? She squeezed his hand. My husband's here. Something shifted in his expression, relief, joy, and that vulnerability she'd glimpsed before. You remember everything. Most of it, the important parts. She brushed his hair back from his forehead, marveling at how natural the gesture felt. I remember the moment I decided. You were bleeding, Calabrese was ranting about my mother, about finishing what he started. And you stepped between us, already wounded, and said, she's under my protection. That ends the discussion. Even knowing what he'd do, even knowing it might start a war, you chose me. I'd choose you again, every time. I know. She leaned down, pressing her lips to his forehead. That's why I chose you too. Antonio cleared his throat. Not to interrupt, but we have a situation. Calabrese's regrouping. He's calling in old debts, building an alliance. The other families are choosing sides. Dante tried to sit up, wincing. How many against us? 3, maybe 4. But the Corsinis and Russos are with us. They're tired of Calabrese's chaos too. It's going to be war, Dante said quietly, his eyes on Alina. Real war. This was just the opening move. Then we'd better win, Alina said, surprising them both. Because I didn't go through all this just to lose you now. Over the next 3 days, as Dante recovered, Alina learned what it meant to be a Morty. Not just the wife of the boss, but a true partner. She sat in on strategy meetings, her analytical mind catching patterns others missed. She remembered details from the fundraiser, conversations overheard, faces glimpsed, that helped identify more of Calabrese's moles. You're terrifying, Antonio told her after she correctly predicted Calabrese's next move based on a comment she'd overheard weeks ago. In the best way. I had a good teacher, she replied, watching Dante coordinate their response from his hospital bed. The war came to a head on the 4th night. Calabrese, desperate and cornered, made his final play. He went to the FBI, offering to turn informant in exchange for immunity and witness protection. He's going to burn us all down with him, Antonio reported, tension crackling through the room. But Alina remembered something, a detail from what Dante had told her about her mother. The federal judge Calabrese killed. What was his name? Harrison, Judge Michael Harrison. And that was never solved. No witnesses. Your mother was the only one, and she disappeared into witness protection before she could testify. Alina stood, packing as her mind raced. But she left something behind. She had to have. My mother documented everything. She was obsessive about it. She turned to Dante. I need to go to my apartment. Absolutely not. Calabrese's men. We'll be watching the FBI building, waiting to see what deal he makes. She moved to his bedside, taking his face in her hands. Trust me, please. He studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Antonio, go with her, full security detail. Her apartment felt strange after days away, like looking at someone else's life. Alina went straight to her closet, pulling out a box she'd hadn't opened in years. Her mother's things, what little she'd left behind. What are we looking for? Antonio asked. This. Alina pulled out what looked like a regular photo album, but hidden in the spine, wrapped in plastic, was a micro-cassette tape. She told me once that if anything ever happened to her, I should give this to someone I trusted absolutely. I never understood what she meant. They played the tape in the car. Her mother's voice, younger but unmistakable, describing what she'd witnessed. Judge Harrison's murder in detail. Calabrese's voice ordering the killing. Everything the FBI would need. This could destroy him, Antonio breathed. That's the idea. Alina looked at the tape, this small thing her mother had hidden for 20 years. But we're not giving it to the FBI. We're not. No, we're giving it to Calabrese. Antonio nearly crashed the car. What? With conditions. He withdraws his FBI offer, leaves the city, and never comes back. Or this goes public, and he faces murder charges with no immunity deal. Dante will never agree to let him walk away. Dante will agree because it ends the war without more bloodshed. Alina met Antonio's eyes in the rearview mirror, and because I'm asking him to. The meeting was arranged for neutral ground, a warehouse owned by the Corsini family. Dante insisted on attending despite his injuries, leaning heavily on a cane but still radiating dangerous authority. Calabrese arrived with a small army, but the other families were there too, witnesses to whatever happened next. You have something of mine, Calabrese said, his eyes fixed on Alina with hatred. I have something that belongs to history, Alina replied, holding up the tape. My mother's testimony about Judge Harrison's murder, every detail, your voice giving the order. The color drained from Calabrese's face. Around them, The other family heads murmured. This was bigger than territorial disputes. That's not possible. She never recorded. She recorded everything. It was her insurance policy. Alina stepped forward, and Dante moved with her, protective even now. Here's the deal, you leave, tonight. Never come back to New York, never come after anyone under Morty protection. In exchange, this tape disappears. And if I refuse? Then it goes to the FBI, the media, everyone. You'll be hunted not just by law enforcement, but by every family you've ever wronged. Dante's voice was cold. Harrison had connections everywhere. His murder was the one line no one was supposed to cross. Calabrese looked around the room, seeing his support evaporate. The other families were already distancing themselves, not wanting to be associated with a judge killer. You're just like your mother, he spat at Alina. Self-righteous, thinking you're better than us. I'm nothing like my mother, Alina replied calmly. She ran, she hid, she died keeping this secret. I'm standing here in front of everyone making a deal. That's not righteousness, that's business. For a moment, violence hung in the air like smoke. Then Calabrese laughed, bitter and defeated. Fine, I accept your terms. He turned to leave, then paused. You think you've won, little girl, but you're part of this world now. It'll corrupt you, destroy you, just like it does everyone else. Maybe, Alina said, but at least I'll be here to see it happen, which is more than you can say. Calabrese left with his remaining men. The other families dispersed after pledging their recognition of the Morty Harper marriage and Alina's place in their world. As the warehouse emptied, Dante pulled Alina against him. That was insane, he murmured against her hair. Brilliant, but insane. I learned from the best. She tilted her head up to look at him. Are you angry? I know you wanted him dead. I wanted you safe more. He cupped her face in his hands. You gave up your normal life for this, for me. My normal life was a lie built on my mother's fear. This might be dangerous, but at least it's real. She turned her head to kiss his palm. Besides, someone needs to keep you from getting shot every time you try to protect me. That might be a full-time job. Good thing I'm unemployed then. He laughed, the sound rich and genuine. Marry me. We're already married. Marry me again, properly this time, with you conscious and remembering every moment. Alina pretended to consider. Will there be less gunfire? I can't promise that. Fewer death threats. Unlikely. What about the Monet sketch? Already hanging in our bedroom. Our bedroom, she raised an eyebrow, presumptuous. Hopeful, he pulled her closer. I've been hopeful since that December night, hoping I'd find a way to deserve you, hoping you'd see past the monster to whatever's left of the man, hopping. She silenced him with a kiss, pouring everything she felt into it, the fear, the anger, the unexpected love that had bloomed in the midst of chaos. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. Yes, she said simply. Yes. To all of it, the marriage, the life, the danger. Yes. 6 months later, Alina stood in the same church where her parents had married, wearing her mother's wedding dress altered to fit. The pews were filled with an unlikely mixture, her father's academic colleagues, volunteers from the foundation, and some of the most dangerous people in New York, all pretending to be civilized for a few hours. Dante waited at the altar, looking devastating in his tuxedo, the scar from his shooting barely visible beneath his collar. His eyes never left her as she walked down the aisle, her father on one arm and Antonio on the other, a bridge between two worlds. Dearly beloved, the priest began, looking slightly nervous at his congregation, we are gathered here today to witness something that has already been forged in fire and sealed in blood, the union of two souls who chose each other against all odds. Alina barely heard the ceremony, lost in Dante's eyes. She'd remembered everything now, not just the night they married, but the months of him watching over her, protecting her without her knowledge. The way he'd redirected his entire organization to support her father's foundation. The way he'd been willing to die rather than let Calabrese take her. Do you, Alina, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband? Again. The congregation laughed. Alina smiled, squeezing Dante's hands. I do, again, always. And do you, Dante, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife? Every day for the rest of my life, he answered, his voice thick with emotion. Then by the power vested in me, and believe me, I checked twice this time, I pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss. Dante didn't wait for permission, pulling Alina against him and kissing her with a passion that made several elderly aunts fan themselves, and Antonio clear his throat loudly. Get a room, someone shouted from the back, probably one of the Corsini boys. We have one, Dante called back, not taking his eyes off Alina. With bulletproof glass and reinforced walls. Romantic, Alina murmured, but she was smiling. The reception was held at the Whitmore Gallery, the same place they'd first seen each other. The Monet sketch was prominently displayed, on loan for the evening. Alina stood in front of it, champagne in hand, when Dante found her. Full circle, he said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. Did you know that night, that we'd end up here? I knew I'd never be able to let you go. Everything else was just details. She leaned back against him, feeling the solid warmth of his chest, the steady beat of his heart. My mother would have hated this. You marrying a criminal. Me choosing not to hide. She turned in his arms. She spent her whole life running from what she saw. I refuse to run from what I've chosen. Even knowing what this life means. The danger, the violence, the constant vigilance. Especially knowing that. She reached up to touch his face. Because I also know what else it means. Protection for those who need it. Justice when the law fails. And you coming home to me every night, no matter what wars we're fighting. Every night, he promised, sealing it with a kiss. Later, as they danced, the city lights sparkling beyond the gallery windows, Alina caught sight of their reflection. The museum curator and the Mafia Boss, an impossible pairing that somehow worked. What are you thinking? Dante asked, spinning her gracefully. That my life diverged completely from its expected path the moment you saw me cry over that painting. Regrets? Never, she met his eyes. I woke up in your bed not knowing who you were. Now I can't imagine waking up anywhere else. Good, he murmured, pulling her closer, because I meant what I said that first morning. The guards aren't keeping you in, they're keeping the world out. Our world, where we make the rules. And what rules do we make? Whatever ones we want. We've already broken all the conventional ones, why stop now? The music changed to something slower, sweeter. Other couples joined them on the dance floor, Antonio with his new girlfriend, her father with Mrs. Chen, a development that still surprised Alina, even some of the rival family members with their spouses. I have a wedding gift for you, Dante said suddenly. Another anonymous donation to the foundation. Better, he pulled a document from his jacket. The deed to the building where Calabrese ran his operations. I'm turning it into a youth center. I thought you might want to run it. Alina stared at the papers. You're giving me a criminal's former headquarters to turn into a place for kids. Poetic justice. Plus, it's already fortified, very safe for an after-school program. She laughed, the sound bright and genuine. Only you would think of safety features for a youth center. Only you would make me want to build one. As the evening wound down and guests began leaving, Alina and Dante stood on the gallery's balcony, looking out over their city. It sprawled before them, dangerous and beautiful, full of shadows and light. Tell me something, Alina said, playing with the wedding ring that now felt natural on her finger. That first night, when I agreed to marry you, was it really my choice? Or did the concussion and chaos make me vulnerable to suggestion? Dante was quiet for a long moment. Do you want the truth? Always. I don't know. He turned to face her fully. You were hurt, scared, and I was offering safety. Maybe that influenced you. But Alina, you fought off 2 grown men before I even got there. You held your own in a gunfight. You stood up to Calabrese when men twice your size would have cowered. Whatever made you say yes, it wasn't weakness. Then what was it? Maybe the same thing that made me watch over you for a year without speaking to you. The same thing that made you trust a blood-covered stranger. Call it fate, instinct, or just the recognition that sometimes two broken pieces fit together perfectly. Alina considered this, then smiled. My mother used to say that life was about the choices we make in the dark, when we can't see the outcome. And what choice are you making now in the light? The same one I made in the dark, she said, pulling him down for a kiss. You, always you. As they left the gallery, ready to start their properly married life, Alina caught a glimpse of their reflection in the glass doors. She looked different than she had 6 months ago, stronger, more confident, wearing designer clothes and deadly-looking heels. But her eyes were the same, just awakened. No longer the woman who cried alone at galleries, but one who'd found her match in the most unlikely place. Home, Dante asked, offering his arm. Home, she agreed, taking it. Their car pulled away into the New York night, bulletproof and beautiful, carrying them toward a future that would never be normal but would always be theirs. Behind them, the city continued its eternal dance of light and shadow, legal and illegal, predator and prey. But Alina and Dante had stepped outside that dance, creating their own rhythm. A museum curator who'd become a mafia queen, a monster who'd learned to love, an impossible marriage that had begun with forgotten vows and would continue with eyes wide open. As they drove through the city they now ruled together, Alina thought about the morning she'd woken up confused and terrified in a stranger's bed. She couldn't have imagined then where that awakening would lead, to shootouts and strategy meetings, to confronting her mother's killer and finding her own strength, to falling in love with someone the world said she should fear. But perhaps that was the point. The most important journeys were the ones you couldn't imagine until you were already on them. The most real loves were the ones that shouldn't exist but did anyway, defying logic and law alike. What are you thinking? Dante asked, his thumb tracing circles on her hand. That I'm glad I woke up in your bed that morning. Even with everything that followed. Especially with everything that followed. She squeezed his hand. Though next time you marry me while I'm concussed, maybe take a video I can actually remember. Next time, he raised an eyebrow, planning on more head injuries. Planning on no more surprise weddings. The two we've had are enough. Fair enough, he agreed, then added with a smirk. Though if you ever want to renew our vows in Vegas. Don't push it, Mr. Morty. Wouldn't dream of it, Mrs. Morty. The titles, once so foreign, now felt right. Mrs. Morty, not just a mafia wife, but a partner, a strategist, a woman who'd chosen her path with eyes wide open. Their penthouse came into view, lights blazing against the darkness. The guards nodded respectfully as they passed, and Alina nodded back. These men who'd once frightened her were now her protectors, her soldiers in a war she'd chosen to fight. Welcome home, Dante said as they entered the penthouse. Alina looked around, at the bulletproof windows, the hidden panic room, the Monet sketch now hanging prominently in the living room. It was a far cry from her studio apartment, from her quiet life of museums and volunteer work. But it was home, not because of the luxury or even the safety, but because Dante was here. The man who'd watched her from afar for a year, who'd killed to protect her before they'd even properly met, who'd married her in a blood-stained shirt and loved her through memory loss and gunfights. I love you, she said suddenly, the words still feeling new and necessary. He pulled her close, his expression soft in a way only she got to see. I love you too, since that December night, through everything that followed and for whatever comes next. Whatever comes next, she repeated, a promise and a challenge all at once. Outside, New York pulsed with its usual chaos, sirens and celebrations, danger and dreams. But inside their fortified home, Alina and Dante had created something else entirely. A marriage born of violence but sustained by choice. A love that shouldn't exist but did anyway, stubborn and real and worth every risk. She'd woken up in his bed a confused stranger. She went asleep in it as his wife, his partner, his equal. And in the morning, when the sun rose over the city they'd claimed together, she'd wake up exactly where she belonged, beside the man who'd shown her that sometimes the most dangerous choice was also the only one worth making. The war was over. Their story was just beginning.